talked a little bit yesterday about the Republican Party making a mockery, making jokes, making light of, not taking seriously, not leading on the matter of these terrorist attacks, these alleged terrorist attacks. That's what they're investigating them as in both New Orleans and Las Vegas. We talked about Senator John Kennedy making his little slapstick jokes in the face of a serious occasion in his home state that left nearly a dozen dead, dozens wounded, some gravely. I read this particular post on Truth Social from Donald Trump where he says, when I said that the criminals coming in are far worse than the criminals that we have in our country, that statement was constantly refuted by Democrats and the fake news media, but it turned out to be true. He posted this at 10:48 a.m., just hours, 5 or so hours after the terrorist attack took place in New Orleans. And now we're a couple days removed, and the lies continue to keep coming. And I've thought about this over the last couple days, that I expected this. I don't think it comes as any surprise. You don't have to be some kind of a prognosticator of events. You don't have to gaze into your crystal ball to understand the lay of the land. That Republicans are they're gonna take advantage of the stupidness of their base. They understand that the base will either just take for whatever they're told at face value, or that they're not paying attention enough to care about what the facts are. And I have a couple of different examples here. 1, 2, 3, 4 examples here. 2 of them, separate examples, are from Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, who you would expect to have some obligation to the truth, right? But we're going to start with Tom Homan, Donald Trump's border czar. All of these individuals are continuing the narrative and the lie that it's because of the open border, it's because of migrants coming across the southern border that we're in this situation with these 2 attacks. This doesn't take into account the fact that both of these attacks were allegedly committed by American citizens, both of whom, one active duty in the United States military, the other a veteran of the United States military. Both American-born, both American citizens. But you wouldn't know that if you were listening to Republicans. You wouldn't know that if you're listening to incoming members of the Trump administration. And that's where we'll start with Tom Homan, the border czar, who is ginning up fear and trying to link the two, even though it's already been disproven that it's not the case.
I agree with them. So we're not out of the woods. This country is in grave danger. We need to secure that border. And despite what's happened the last 2 days in Las Vegas and in New Orleans, this administration is not stopping. They're still releasing thousands of people every week through the CBP-1 app, the CHMV program, and Border Patrol continues to release people in this country without proper vetting. This is not a good thing, and I can't wait for the new administration to take power and secure this border and protect our national security.
Well, the police chief was asked about the incident in Las Vegas, if they had seen any motivation and inspiration from any terror group. They had not identified anything there yet, I should say, at least. They said they're very heavily still in the middle of that investigation.
How would securing the border— it's already secured, by the way. It's not like it's just an open metric where people can just run through. How would securing the border have stopped either New Orleans or Las Vegas, Tom Homan? Please explain to the adults in the room, not the Fox News audience, the adults in the country, the intelligent people in the country, the people who care about facts. Explain to us how the open border, or closing the open border, would have prevented this. How would it have stopped the man from traveling from his home in Houston, Texas, to New Orleans? How would it have stopped the American citizen, active duty military member from parking in front of the Trump hotel? It's not a hotel and casino, because Donald Trump isn't qualified to have a gambling license. How would it have stopped him? Not just Tom Homan, the current or hoping to be future Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, made 2 appearances on Fox News yesterday, One was on Fox News, where he did the same thing, continued the same narrative, banged the same drum about the border, tying it to these two horrific events, rather than dealing with reality on reality's terms. This is how Mike Johnson did it.
And let me say something else that's obvious, and I don't know if enough attention is being paid to this, but we all know that for the last 4 years, the Biden administration has been completely derelict in its duty. The congressional Republicans, we here in the House and the Senate, have repeatedly asked the DHS under the Biden administration about the correlation, the obvious concern about terrorism and the wide open border. The idea that dangerous people were coming here in droves and setting up potentially terrorist cells around the country. We have been ringing the alarms. We impeached DHS Secretary Mayorkas in the House over that very issue and others related to it. So this is a big concern. They told us, Lawrence, for 4 years that the #1 threat was so-called racially motivated extremism. It was nonsense. This is the thing that we were all concerned about. This is why we raised the alarms. This is why we passed H.R. 2, the strongest border security act ever passed by Congress. And Chuck Schumer and the Democrats in the Senate would not put that through and make it into law. The Biden administration has a lot to account for here, and we see now in glaring view of everybody that this dereliction of duty has real consequences. It's a concern, and it will be an ongoing concern for some time.
While they run a photo of the alleged attacker, the terrorist, Mike Johnson rambles on about the wide open border as though there's a linkage. And Fox News is doing the heavy lifting for him, allowing him, giving him the airtime, not correcting him, not keeping him on track to talk about the actual causes. That, by the way, was at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time, roughly. This next one was at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, where he's continuing to beat the drum.
They tried to convince us that the greatest threat to the homeland was racially motivated extremism when we all looked at the wide open border and thought logically that that might lead to terrorist attacks in the future. You know, we need a dramatic change, and this emphasizes once again why this election was so important to the country. And we cannot get President Trump here soon enough. 18 days away from his inauguration and his cabinet coming in. And we need all of these people that he's chosen who are law and order types who will get control of these agencies, including the FBI and the DOJ, to get to work immediately. It can't happen soon enough.
Two things are happening here. One, he's poo-pooing the idea that there's any problem with domestic right-wing extremism, with white nationalism, even though we witnessed what took place in Poway, California at a synagogue. We witnessed what took place in Pittsburgh at a synagogue. We witnessed what took place at a Walmart in El Paso. We witnessed what took place at a grocery store in Buffalo. We know the real threat of right-wing racist extremism. Mike Johnson, though, the deeply Christian man who would not lie, continues to lie in the face of that faith about this particular horrific event that took place by two American citizens, people born here, people who served their country in the military, people with right-wing ideas. Liar, Mike Johnson. Incoming, he hopes, Speaker of the House. He's not the only member of Congress, though. I'll leave you with this. Randy Weber is his name. He's a Texas Republican congressman. He's going on the same deal, talking about the open borders, that being the problem. That's the narrative. And listen, they don't directly tie it to, but while they're in the midst of talking about these two tragedies, these two horrific events, they're banging the drum of the open borders. Again, heavy, break my fingers, air quotes, open borders. Watch him.
Look, I'm on the Border Security Caucus, and we've had former Border Patrol people come in and talk to us. 55,000 under Biden. I call him Biden because I think he's Obama's third term. 55,000 special interest aliens have come across our border. That's from countries who hate us: Iran, Iraq, Syria, Yemen. You can go right down the list. And yet they're coming into this country free. They've been handled at the border. Now, Cheryl, if only 10% got through that we didn't know about of 55,000, that's 5,500 special terrorists, potential terrorists, that are in this country in Mayorkas and company. As you know, they said we've got operational control of the border. He's been saying that forever. They're not doing their job, and Americans are paying the price for that.
This is not serious leadership. We deserve better than this. We deserve sober-minded, serious leaders who will face down this problem with a legislative solution, with a law enforcement solution, instead of fear-mongering and demagoguing against a migrant community that by leaps and bounds commits fewer crimes than native-born Americans. It takes until like the third generation of migrant family to finally start committing crimes at the same rate that Americans do. And this is evidenced by what we've witnessed over the course of the last few days with what took place in New Orleans and what took place in Las Vegas. These weren't immigrants, they were Americans. But that doesn't sell with Fox News. That doesn't garner votes for the Republican Party. Lies do. Racism does. Fear does. And they're here to open up the tap and pour a big full pint for their viewers. What do you think? I invite you to this conversation. You can click below, comment in the comment section. We can disagree agreeably, I'm sure of it. You can also call the voicemail line, which is open, 714-576-4054. And of course, as always, you can email me, daily@dollemore.com. If you appreciate what I do, the manner with which I do it, please consider supporting this work. Independent media, very important right now. Very important right now. I mean, it's one thing when you got Fox News doing this kind of shit. It's a whole other thing when you've got your CNN and your MSNBCs missing the moment continuously prior to the election and now. I would appreciate your support. You can click the join button below, become a channel member for $2 a month. You can also go over to patreon.com/IDoubtItPodcast. Both great ways to help support this work. I would appreciate it very much. I'm on social media at Dollemore. I'll see you next time. Until then, be genuine and take care of one another.